good to see you for this week's Recharge. I am just so honored that Rick gave me the opportunity to be able to lead the session. And just remember, before we get started, we have that like button, that share button, and the comment button. I'm an extrovert, so I love interaction. So go ahead and comment and respond to anything being said. I would love for you to interact with me. With that being said, let's go ahead and let me say a quick prayer, and then we're going to dive in. God, you are so good. We thank you for being faithful, for loving us as we are, and taking us closer and closer to you in our relationship. I pray that you speak in a way that only you can. In your name, amen. So as some of you may know, I have a bachelor's degree in health promotion and 2 master's degrees, one in Christian education and one in marriage and family therapy. And the connection between those degrees is that I really care for the health of people, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. And so I've asked Rick to allow me just to talk to you tonight about a little bit of what may have been going on in your head or your heart during quarantine and as you're reemerging. And not only am I going to be talking to you tonight, but Monique is going to join me and talk to you a little bit about your kids. So we're going to go ahead and get started. And we're going to start by me showing you this picture right here. Now, when you look at this, we see a beach. We see a lovely beach. We all have memories of the beach. Some of you may be thinking, I can't wait to get to a beach. Some of you may be thinking, I went to the beach. You may be thinking of memories, but we all picture something, and you're picturing it now because I literally threw the picture up in front of you, and it causes your mind to begin to run either backwards or forwards in connection with the beach. All right, we'll take the picture down. What we look at matters, and that's really kind of where we're going to start, is talking about focus. And I'm going to read scripture. Hang with me because it's like 9 or 10 verses, but we are going to read from Matthew 6:25 through 34. Therefore, I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat or drink, or about your body, what you will wear. Is not life more than food, and the body more than clothes? Look at the birds of the air. They do not sow or reap or store away in barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not much more valuable than they? Can any of you, by worrying, add a single hour to your life? And why do you worry about clothes? See how the flowers of the field grow. They do not labor or spin. Yet I tell you that not even Solomon in all of his splendor was dressed like one of these. If that's how God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today and tomorrow is thrown into the fire, will he not much more clothe you, you of little faith? So do not worry, saying, what shall we eat? What shall we drink? What shall we wear? For the pagans run after all these things, and your heavenly Father knows that you need them. But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. Therefore, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. So there are a couple things I wanted to talk to you about in this passage. First of all, it doesn't say that clothes don't matter, food doesn't matter. It doesn't say that. But it tells you what matters more to God, and that is you, that your life has such value to him that when we kind of think, how am I going to pay the bills, or what am I going to do here, or we need food, and just all the little things that we may worry about, we get so focused on the small things that we need to back up and say, God cares even more about me than I could ever imagine. You know, I think about, when people say, I don't know if your kids do this, but if the house caught on fire, what would you take? And, obviously I think my kids and my dog, hopefully Rick would be running out himself too. But my thought is I take what is most valuable to me, which are my kids first. My kids might say I'd take my dog, but I would take my kids first, and then I would take my dog, because nothing else nothing else matters. It all pales in comparison to those that I love. And God's the same way. Everything pales in comparison. So Jesus said these words, and he's just reminding you, all of it pales in comparison to you. Your life is so important to God. So if these things that pale in comparison to you are taken care of, do not worry, because you will be taken care of. And we need to remember too that these were Jesus's words. When Jesus was here on earth, he was confined to the things that man needed. There were days he had no place to lay his head. They had to get food. There were so many of those practical things that Jesus himself faced. So he's not just talking to you as God that has everything. He's talking as Jesus that understood these struggles. So knowing that everything matters to God, but of all things, you matter most. The second thing that sticks out to me is worry doesn't help. Now, we all could say that worry doesn't help, but if we really, really believed it, we would stop worrying. There's a word that you hear a lot in the psychology world, and that's called ruminating. And maybe you've heard of that word, maybe you haven't. But it's where you take a situation, maybe something that happened, and you run backwards over it in your head, and you repeat it and let it play out. And then you repeat what you should have said or what you could have said. And then maybe you even take it a step further and say, well, when I see this person, this is what I'm going to do, and this is what I'm going to say. And you run it over and over and over again. And temporarily, it might help a little bit, because psychologically, your brain kind of thinks, I'm solving the problem. I'm fixing the problem, because in your head, you're picturing yourself fixing it. But actually what you're doing is you're making it worse, because just like when I showed you the picture of the beach, you focused on the beach. Well, when you're ruminating, you're going back over the situation. What might happen, what could happen, what should have happened, what will happen. And so we need to actually stop. That's a form of worrying. So if you find yourself ruminating, then you shift your picture. You think about what it is that you can think about. And you see that in this passage. Jesus, after he says, don't worry, he shifts the focus, and he has you think about the grass and the flowers. And so it's not just on yourself. It's thinking, look at what God has done. Look at how God is faithful. And that's to things that hold no value compared to you. And so that is what we need to do. Jesus was the greatest counselor to walk the earth. And so that's what we need to do as well, is when we're ruminating and focusing on worry or fear or frustration with our children or our work. And that's a real serious thing to think about. I know some of you, your jobs, you don't know if you're going to have a job next week or next month. But focusing and stressing on, am I going to have a job, and ruminating what you're going to do and how you're going to handle it, it doesn't help. So be in the moment and you go back and you think, God was faithful here. God was faithful here. God was faithful here. God will be faithful here. So we have to actually stop our brain from running wild. In verse 33, you will see where it says, seek first. It says, but seek first his kingdom and his righteousness. So when you see that, it's saying, it's okay. We know you've got to think about the practical things of life. Those are real things to think about. But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness. It's about where you're going first, where you're seeking that comfort from, that fulfillment from, that sense of safety from. If you seek him first, these things will come. Now, it ends with the very end. It says, each day has enough trouble of its own. And it talks about not worrying about tomorrow, being today. Now, planning is a necessary thing. We all have to make plans. We see that all through Scripture, especially in Proverbs. We want to plan. We want to be smart. But we have to keep our mind and our heart in the present and in the day. That will keep us in a healthy place. These past few months have been crazy. There's nothing we could have done to prepare for it. But the amazing thing about how God created us is our brains, and therefore our emotions, adapt to help us survive. And it takes an average of 66 days to form a new habit. Well, guess how long we've been in quarantine? We're right there around those 66 days, give or take a few days. And so what's happened, whether you realize it or not, in order for you to survive, your brain has made adaptations. Those adaptations affect your emotions, but it also affects your socialization. And so, a lot of people may be thinking, hey, I can't wait for everything to return to normal, and I'm just going to jump back into my life and it's all going to be the same. And for some of you, that may be the case. Great, I'm so happy for you. But for some of you, that may not be the case. And Monique and I were talking earlier this week about this very thing, and about how we really just wanted to speak to you about your children, your tweens, your teens, and you, and maybe what it might look like, or what you could expect, or some things you could even do in helping the return to the new normal. Do you want to share kind of how we even started talking about this?
So the church opened back up and we were having service, and so that meant we did have some kids that were coming in, and I had a personal experience because my kids came with me and I had completely different reactions from them. I had one kid that was completely okay, completely fine, and he just started talking back with his friends, like didn't skip a beat. It was just normal for him. Then on the other hand, I had Porker, and he reacted in a way that I was not prepared for. I wasn't expecting it, and it's not something I even considered. And he completely kind of withdrew from everything and everyone. And he went and he sat by himself, away from everybody, and he just started crying. And I went and knelt down next to him, and I was questioning him, like, where's this coming from? Because Porker is a very outgoing kid. He loves to be around kids. And so for him to just withdraw like that and separate himself, something was definitely wrong. So I go and ask him, I'm like, baby, what is wrong? What's the matter? And he just has those little tears coming down his face, and he said, Mom, I haven't been around kids, and I'm scared. I'm nervous. I haven't been around a lot of people since this started, and I don't know what to do. He didn't feel safe. He didn't feel okay, and he was genuinely scared. So it's, some kids are going to feel like that coming back.
And he's been in a big family. He's been interacting with peers. This is the church. This is like his second home. He's here all the time. But this was his response. And that you had one respond that way and one not. And they're both really outgoing kids. So it wasn't something I know you were expecting.
Yes.
And you've seen a couple other behaviors too, right?
Right. So we
not
had
from him, but from others.
Some that are okay. Then we had like Porker withdrawing and being a little bit scared. And then on the other hand, we have kids that they come back and they're ready to be with other kids, but they've been kind of by themselves for so long. So everything's been about themselves, and it's my toys. This is my stuff. I'm playing with this. And they forgot how to get along, and they have forgot those social interaction skills. And so I think that's going to be something else that we are going to have to deal with, is teaching them what's okay and how to interact with each other again.
And, we were talking about this because I think it's really important for us to understand as parents. So they're linking quarantine and our experience in quarantine like a major life stressor, the same way moving, a child would have to adjust to that move, the same way, any major life transition would be. Quarantine's a major life transition, even if they're not able to fully understand it, and you think, they just been playing the whole time, everybody's okay. It's not been traumatic for my kid. And some of your kids may not skip a beat, but it's common for you to see regression. Bedwetting may start back if you've got younger kids. Maybe potty training skills will go down a little bit, and definitely mood control.
Yes.
And our tendency as parents, if now mine are tweens and teens, but younger kids, my tendency would be, that's me, stop! to want to reprimand the action. But we've done a little bit of research and a little bit of talking, and that's really not the way that it should be handled.
Kids need a minute, they don't need us to correct them right away, they have to figure this out. So there needs to be a pause whenever you see something that might seem off. Maybe they did get frustrated. Give them a minute. And then let's go talk to them to see what their frustration is and see how we can help them through it rather than us getting frustrated with them because we think they should know better.
Yes. Well, and you may also not see the stuff they may do fine when you bring them to church, you bring them to an activity, but you'll see it at home. They save, and that's a healthy thing, that they save up their negativity. They don't blow their stink on everybody else, but they save it for you. That actually means they feel safe with you. Aren't we lucky? So, you may see it at home when you say, I need you to go clean your room and wash the dishes, or whatever it might be for your kids, or you just ask them to do something like pick up their toys and they freak out and throw a tantrum. Actually, the best thing to do is ignore the tantrum. And that's the last thing you would instinctually want to do. But after ignoring the tantrum, you still, once they calm down, they still have to follow through with what you've asked. So this isn't a freeload, coast, pet and stroke your kids and ask nothing of them. They need structure.
Absolutely.
But you do give them space to feel their emotions. And then it's actually this is a great time to teach them about emotions, and you came up with something fabulous and a way to teach them. Why don't you share that with everybody?
Yes. So kids, especially younger ones, they don't know what they're feeling. They know how they feel, but they don't know the words to describe it inside. So we kind of use a feelings chart, and you'll see here that I have all kinds of different weather-related things that go along with your feelings. So for younger ones, I recommend starting with emotions that they recognize. They know happy, they know sad, they know anger, right? They know what it is like to be mad. Those things they understand. But if they put something with weather related next to that, sunny is happy, that makes sense. Rainy is sad, right? Thunderstorm might be angry or frustration. So we start off with those things and we say, hey, how's your weather today? And let them point to how they're feeling. And then it opens up conversation for some of these other emotions that they don't understand what it means. But now is the time to talk to them and get them to understand what it's like to feel lonely or to feel like, some other emotions that they don't quite understand yet.
And then understanding how we can get them back to the sunshine. Yes. So the things that can make them happy and talking to them. I mean, this is a great time to teach really coping skills. And that's not just to children. That also moves us next to the tweens. And we both have a tween.
Yes.
And, actually, the psychologists are saying that this is the hardest hit group in all of this. That they are the most vulnerable. And the reason being, this is actually a stage, God ordained, that their minds begin to change. And without getting too scientific, the part of their brain, that prefrontal cortex, the part of their brain that helps them think through and process and rationalize and the high coping skills, it's being really nice right now and saying the other parts of the brain need to develop. So I'm just going to sit back and let them develop. But the problem is what's developing are the amygdala, it's the rash, it's the emotion. So you're going to see drama and crying and impulse and anger. And in part, they can't help it. And what they can help is self-control of their mouth. But they can't help their feelings. But this is also a time where it's a natural thing where they transition from their family and their parents being their primary group that they go to for love and support and interaction. And now it pushes toward their peer group. So they're at the very beginning of their peers being primary, but now they've been without their peers.
Yes.
And that's really hard for them to cope and adapt, and it's not their fault. And so, you can see everything from an obsession with technology, which I think is pretty common, to withdrawal. They're in their room because they're getting sad, they're lonely, and again, no offense to their family, but you're not first to them. There is a shift a God-ordained toward independence shift in their really where they get their needs met. And so it's important that we know how to meet them. And I know we've done something similar, not even knowing we were. So TikTok, apparently China can spy on you, but that's okay. TikTok is this crazy app, and you make 15 to 60 second videos, and about all sorts of things. Some are really dumb, some are spiritual, but both of our kids have gotten really into it. And so we've created accounts and joined them in this crazy world. Would we love TikTok if it weren't for our children?
No.
No, probably not. But we love it for our kids. And so at this age, activity is so important. Not just physical activity, and that's important. You need to make sure those tweens, as much as they think you're mean for making them, make them go outside. But they also need mental, their brains are so, it's called plastic. It's so movable. Their brains are growing so much that they need to be challenged. But they're not going to let you sit down and give them math problems.
No.
But they will let you TikTok. And so you come up with creative things. I know one day if I asked Brooks to sit down and color with me, he'd laugh in my face and say no. But we made cards and letters for people, and then we took them to them at church and ding-dong ditched them. Now, he did it all for the ding-dong ditch because he thought that was fun. But we also were being creative and doing something artistic. And so, doing things like that with your children, no matter how tired you are, make them a priority. Join them in their world instead of saying, come read a book with me, or let's play a game. Ask them what they want to do and join them in their world.
Absolutely. There's a lot of parents that are trying to figure out how to help their kids through this. There's a lot of parents I've talked to personally that are like, my kids are depressed. They're staying in their rooms. They don't want to come out. They went from being around all of their friends at school, all of their friends at church, and now there's literally nobody. And so now that things are opening back up and they're having to readjust, but getting them through that depression is very important. Drawing them out, finding what they like to do, and join them in doing it. Whether we enjoy it or not is really not important right now. Their mental health is more important than us.
And don't give them too much space. That's a big thing. Yeah. So, I just want to be in my room. Give me my space. No. They can have some space. They can be on technology because that's the way to communicate with their friends, but you've got to get them out. And I think noticing changes in sleep, in their room in darkness, there's things to look for to see if maybe they need help beyond what a parent can give them. Changes in eating habits. There's so many things to look for. But try with you. Your presence matters. Even though you're not primary, it matters and it makes a difference. And so really butt into their lives. They need you, even if they're not aware that they need you. And then after tweens, we move to teens and teenagers. This is really when they're flexing their independent muscles. And now they've been told by everyone down to their parents, you can't leave your house.
Right.
And they have very little control over anything. No social decisions, no nothing. So if you're going to continue to quarantine and stay at home as much as possible, find ways to give them choices. I know my broker at Ladder and Bloom, he did a family dinner theme night, and every night was a different theme. Monday night was a color night. They picked a color. All the food was that color, and they wore that color. The next one was a certain country night, and that next one was a sports team night, and they picked, and the kids got to pick. And they actually participated in that. So it gave them a sense of independence. I'm telling mom and dad what we're wearing. I'm telling them what we're eating. I'm telling them what we're doing. It's something small, but little things add up and little things matter. And I think what we also want you to know before we move on to the adults is what you're doing here at this church to prepare for the kids coming back, and then what we can do as parents.
So, for our kids, we know that there's all kind of emotions. Like I said, even with my own kids, there was things that I wasn't expecting to get out of them. So it's really getting with our volunteers and saying, hey, I know we're used to being structured. This is how things were. we need to ease up a bit. We need to ease the kids back into this. They might need some space, and that's going to be okay. Maybe we pull them aside. Maybe we have somewhere for them to sit by themselves until they're ready, because that's really important, is for us not to force them into something they're not ready for. Some of them may cry, parents. I'm just letting you know, some of them may cry, and it's okay. We're ready for that. We're expecting that, and as it goes on and they're around their friends, it's going to get better. So we're prepared, our volunteers are prepared, and we're going to get through this together.
Well, and she did something instinctively that I want to encourage you parents to do, is instead of throwing them back in with 20, 30, 40, 50 people, call a friend and have them have a couple play dates. There might be fighting, there might be that's mine, but give them on a small scale an introduction to people before you throw them at a large scale. And that's just a practical thing that you can do. But that's also a practical thing for adults. And I want to hit a little bit on adults as well, because what we do, what we say, how we act directly impacts what our kids do, what they say, and how they act. So the first thing I want to say is, Nat, if you know me well, I'm very close to my children. My son will say, my mom's my best friend. But our kids, it's okay for you to be their best friend, but they're not our friends.
Right.
And a healthy relationship between a parent and a child. Now we're talking about teenagers down. If you're adult to adult, that's different. But teenagers and down, they're not your friend. They're not your therapist. So if you are worried about your bills, if you are worried about being around people, if you are dealing with anxiety or dealing with some depression, they are not your go-to person.
Absolutely.
You will affect them. They may appear strong, they may appear helpful, but that's not their role. So you have got to learn to deal with what you have without using your children really as a coping mechanism. I think the other thing is take a break from the news. Take a break. Absolutely. If you have to from Facebook. I love Facebook has this feature where you can unfollow but not unfriend. So they have no idea. Then you can also block people from your posts. So if you got people that debate or people that post stuff that gets you riled up inside, just snooze them for 30 days. By then, most of this will blow over, and if it hasn't, snooze them 30 more. So that they are not inciting emotions. It can. I am snoozing so many people right now. But if you post stuff that makes me feel yuck feelings, I'm just going to snooze you, because that's the smart thing to do. You don't bring toxicity. It's your choice if you bring toxicity to you or not.
Absolutely.
So you snooze them. Don't watch the news 24/7. That again, that's in your control to bring negativity to you. Take care of your body. Exercise, eat well. That directly affects your mind. It actually has a direct impact on the brain. You don't have to go out and run or be Jane Fonda, but just be active and get in the sunlight. And that goes for your children as well. I know some of you, though, are battling diagnosed anxiety and depression, and that is a real thing. I know I've seen things fly on Facebook, but let me tell you, that's like somebody being diagnosed with diabetes, a broken arm, cancer. Like, it is a diagnosis. And so when somebody tells you don't worry, you're like, shush, you have no clue what I'm going through. But I want to tell you that these things, Jesus said these things, and he didn't say these were for the people that didn't deal with anxiety and depression. What Jesus taught in Matthew 6, that goes for everybody. And if you have depression and anxiety, your muscles that you're exercising to cope are going to be a whole lot, they're going to work a whole lot more than somebody that's not battling with those things. But when you work out harder in a gym than other people, what does that make you? It makes you stronger. So if you have depression or anxiety, it doesn't own you, right? You've got to remember, it doesn't own you. You are not its property. Therefore, you have some power in it. Continue to see your therapist, continue to take medication, but you own it. God owns it. So do these things that we've suggested. Focus on the positive. Remember how God's been faithful, and believe that he will be. Don't ruminate. Stop those thoughts as they enter your mind. Trap them and think about something positive. Put scriptures all over your house. Put pictures that remind you of God's faithfulness. You can only think about one thing at a time. Only one thing, literally. So you have the power to switch it. You may be switching it 500 times in a minute, but keep switching it. The more you exercise that switch to think positive, you can retrain your brain, even with diagnosable depression and anxiety. So we've tried to talk really, really fast, but the nuts and bolts are have a reemergence plan.
Yes.
For yourself, for your children. Don't lose your temper if they're misbehaving more than normal. Be patient. Give grace to them, give grace to yourself, and know more than anything else, we're ready for you here at Bethel. We love you. We want you back. We love your children. And we want to be part of your reemergence plan. And that starts, is it June 7th?
June 7th, yes.
We want to see you here on June 7th with a mask, without a mask, whatever makes you comfortable. But we want you here. We love you, and we hope to see you soon.